Welcome to an Alphabet of Fairy from Tales of Fae and Folk, and this time we will take a look at the letter L. In this snippet of folklore, we will look at the Lamiak, the Lutin, and the Ludki. The Lamiak are female fairies from the Basque region of northern Spain, a Celtic province full of strange mythologies. These are cave and river fairies who love human men, and human men are attracted to them also. They help the farmers of the region, payment being food left for them at night, wheat, cornbread and cider. And yet not all Lamiak encounters are positive. Sometimes they kidnap these young men. These lovers must supply the Lamiak with food of bread, curds and milk. Lamiak love to spin and build dolmens. They love houses and castles and churches and bridges, and also they love to wash their clothes at night. It is said that when these fairies are to die, they always ask for a human to be there with them. They need the human to see them and pray for them, or they cannot pass away. Lamiak are known to ask humans for their help. In one tale, a Lamiak asked a midwife for her help, and this she did, aiding the Lamiak, and they paid her with precious gifts of golden brushes and silver coins. The fairies invited her to eat with them. Their bread was so white and fluffy, not the poor coarse brown bread the midwife was used to. She broke off a small piece to take with her for later, placing it in her handbag. The meal was finished and finally she could leave. She began to rise from her seat, but found that she could not get up. The Lamiak explained that she must have taken something from them that she did not have permission to take. She confessed that she had taken a small piece of the bread, and they told her to take it from her bag and leave it on the table. This she did, and now she could go. As she left the home of the Lamiak, they warned her never look back when she was on the road. She kept her eyes firmly facing forwards all the way until she placed one foot on her own doorstep, and at this she turned around thinking she would be safe. Instantly half of her precious gifts were affected by fairy magic. Half the brushes turned to coal, and half the silver turned to butter. In another legend, a Lamia helped a resident of Dima by allowing him shelter in her cave during a torrential rainstorm. As he left, she gave him a piece of coal as a gift, and as he stepped from her cave, this transformed into gold. One Lamia fell hopelessly in love with a young man from Gorastiaga, but the young man he died. In her grief she pulled a sheet from a walnut shell and covered his body with the magical cloth. She stayed by him all the night long, and as the cock crowed at sunlight, she sadly had to leave. One Lamia kidnapped a handsome young fellow, and she hid him in her cave. The local priest came to the cave to free him. This man carried a cross and the host in his hands, but the priest could not free the young man. As he turned to leave, the Lamia told him he himself was only allowed to go because of what he carried in his hands, and also because the love of Christ that he had in his heart. There is another tale. One young farm woman would travel to a neighbouring farm every single day to spin. One of these days she passed by a cave entrance as usual. The Lamiak who lived there came from the cave and told her never go near their home again. The arrogant girl, though, would have none of it. Twice she boldly and stupidly walked past the cave, and on the third time she completely disappeared. All that was left of her were her rosary beads scattered across a nearby field. There are ways, however, to avoid these kidnappings. Children of the Mimino ravine area were told to hold their noses and say out loud, "We ate cod on a Friday." Amulets could be made and carried that help, filled with celery or rue. The Lamiak would never touch anyone who carried these things. It has been known that humans sometimes have kidnapped a Lamiak. At a place called Mendaro, some men captured a Lamia and they took her to their home. She refused to speak one single word until one day they placed a pot of milk on the fire to boil. As the milk bubbled, she shouted, "White up," and escaped right up the chimney with the steam. The Lutin is a mischievous little fairy found in France, especially in the regions of Normandy and Brittany, and also in the Quebec area of Canada due to emigration. Fairies seem to follow wherever we go. These are household fairies in the same vein as the brownie or the hobgoblin, with the very same characteristics. They also seem to be related to the leprechaun and the pixie. Sometimes the Lutin transform into horses, already saddled for a ride, and tempting weary travellers to hop on. These are known as cheval bayard, only for the rider to be bucked into a ditch after an exhausting wild ride. As with many other mischief-making fairies, these are fond of tying knots and elf-locks in the manes of horses, although they do seem to love horses, and children also. Other things they love to transform into are little boys, red-clothed monks, men with wolves' heads, moving flames, gusts of wind, and spindles. And they can also make themselves completely invisible. These fairy folk live near standing stones and also near stagnant water, in caves also, and they love to wander the moorlands and wide open spaces. There are many different types of Lutin. The Lutin noir are countryside fairies who love good wine and pretty girls. Another is the nain rouge, a more hobgoblin kind, but on the whole, this race is very wide and varied. Household Lutin must be quietly respected and paid with food or creamy milk. Doing this will have them happily soothe upset babies, tend the fire, help with the cooking. But should they be disrespected, they will turn boggart-like, drying up the cow's milk, tipping over tables and chairs and pots and pans, stripping wool from the sheep, and basically being a complete pest. To stop this, the only thing to do is to sprinkle flaxseed onto the floor. They cannot bear this and will leave immediately. Another example of Lutin mischief is changing seashells into golden pieces that, on being found and treasured, turn right back into shells, a great sport for the Lutin, who will burst into peals of laughter. And yet they aren't all bad, these fairy creatures. They are, after all, just fairies. They are known to warn humans of oncoming danger and have been known to save shipwrecked sailors. In Quebec, the Lutin took the form of animal familiars, especially white cats, and those animals who just feel other. Good Lutins of Quebec may control the weather, or even shave the beards of those whose houses they inhabit before they wake, and bad Lutins are more poltergeist-like, causing annoying acts of chaos. Ludki are fairy folk from the Slavic countries who love singing and music, and they play instruments that look like tiny cymbals. They also love a party and a feast. They are very tribal creatures though, and will wage terrible wars between different Ludki family groups. These are house fairies, similar to the Lamiak as mentioned earlier. Hobgoblins and brownies are similar, and as such they are kindly disposed to human people. The payment for their favours is the usual milk, and yet with the Ludki they also love millet. Sometimes they will borrow a pot or a pan from the kitchen and reward those humans who graciously lend them, but the anger of the Ludki and the revenge will rain down upon those humans who begrudge the lending of kitchen pots to them. In Serbia there was a belief that the Ludki were the original inhabitants of the country, and as pagans they could not bear the sound of the church bells, so they fled to safer places, the caves and the wild spots. And yet it was the Ludki who taught the early humans how to build homes, and as brilliant smiths they also taught these crafts to the humans also. Ludki are said to be small in stature, with large heads and bulging eyes. They always wear bright clothes and love to wear red hats. They have their own peculiar language, in which contradiction with themselves is one of the main characteristics. They live in forests, in human homes, under the ground and in the mountain areas. Their homes are said to look like little bread ovens, but furnished in a very comfortable and homely way. The Ludki are also keen farmers who love growing corn, which they mill to make a coarse bread, and they gather berries, nuts and roots. And in times of hardship, they are known to steal human-grown beans, turnips and grain in order to survive. When a Ludki passes away, there will be a burning of the body. They are more mortal than the other fairy races. Their ashes are carefully collected and buried in earthen pots, along with pots of tears shed by the families of the fallen. And there we have the letter L, the latest episode in our Alphabet of Fairy Folk. I hope you have enjoyed this time's telling of tales. I look forward to seeing you again. Until next time, dear friends, take care, brightest of blessings, and remember, don't play with the fairy folk, or you may end up in my folk tales yourself.